Ready to open the hood? UseTool for the tutorials.
And for car parts, the right idea is the Mr. Auto app. Easy, fast, and with better prices than on the website.
You can find the bulk distribution kit in the video exclusively on the Mr. Auto website and in the link in the description. Before you do this, we recommend you watch our video titled 10 Things to Know When Changing a Timing Belt. Turn your engine off, pull up the handbrake, pull on the bonnet release lever and open the bonnet. For safety reasons, we recommend unplugging the battery. To do this, we recommend watching the video How to Replace the Car Battery on a Golf 6 1.6 TDI. Take off the engine cover. In order to change the timing belt, you have to lift the front of the vehicle and remove the passenger side wheel to gain complete access. Raise the front of the vehicle and put it in the two-axle stands. We strongly suggest watching the tutorial, raising your vehicle safely before carrying out this step. You will then be able to take off the wheel. Don't forget to slide it under the vehicle. Remove the crankcase. Using a ratchet, an extension and a 10mm socket, unscrew the two screws holding the diesel filter flange. Then, using the same tools, unscrew the nut holding it in place. Then shift the flange. Remove the electrical sheath from its housing to gain access to the screws holding the coolant expansion tank. Then unscrew the two screws using a Torx 25 bit. Using a flathead screwdriver, disconnect the lever sensor from the coolant expansion tank. Remove the two cooling hoses from their housings. Do not remove the expansion tank right away. The coolant system needs to be bled beforehand. For more information on this step, it is essential to watch the video How to Train and Purge the Golf 6 1.6 TDI coolant system. Once the system has been bled, unscrew the windscreen washer fluid filler hole retaining screw using a 10mm spanner. Then move it aside slightly. Using a flat screwdriver, remove the cooling hose guiding tab. Then disconnect the plug from the exhaust gas pressure sensor. Using a ratchet, an extension and an empty hexagon socket, unscrew the two screws of the pressure sensor holding plate. Then unclip the two gas hoses from their holdings so that you can move the entire set aside. You can now shift the coolant expansion tank aside and the fuel filter flange to the engine side. Hold them in position with a clamping clip. Using a ratchet, an extension and a 13mm socket, unscrew the two screws on the windscreen washer fluid hole retaining plate. You will now need to remove the lower mudguard. Using a Torx 25 screwdriver, remove the 7 screws holding the mudguard. And remove it. For this operation, you have to remove the accessory belt. To do this, we recommend watching our video How to Replace the Accessory Belt on the Golf 6 1.6 TDI. You will then need to remove the damper pulley. You must not use a socket wrench to unscrew it. Use an impact wrench, which will not cause the crankshaft to rotate. Unscrew the 4 screws on the pulley using an extension and an M10 12-point socket. Remove the damper pulley. For this operation, you will have to remove the passenger side engine support. You will therefore have to offset with a jack placed in support of the oil pan. You're also going to have to regularly raise and lower the engine to gain access to certain areas. Once the jack is under tension, using a ratchet, an extension and a 16 socket, unscrew the 2 screws on the engine mount on the chassis, then remove them. Then, using a ratchet, an extension and an 18mm socket, unscrew the 2 screws of the engine mount located on the engine. Then remove the mount. You then need to remove the metal plate. Using a 16mm spanner, unscrew the first retaining screw. To be able to access the different screws and remove them, adjust the height of the engine with a jack. Then, using a 10mm spanner, unscrew the screw that holds the hose to the metal plate. Using a flathead screwdriver, disconnect the temperature sensor from the cooling system. Unscrew the screw on the upper mudguard to gain access to the hole that will allow you to easily unscrew another screw from the metal plate. Adjust the height of the engine, then, using a ratchet, an extension and a 16 socket, remove the screw. Lower the engine slightly to gain access to the final plate retaining holes. First, with a 10mm spanner, remove the nut holding the hose. Then, tighten the screw holding the plate with a 16mm spanner. Raise the engine slightly. Remove the windscreen washer fluid to fill a hole. Lift the 3 latches holding the plastic cover and remove it. Using a flathead screwdriver, disconnect the pressure sensor from the fuel rail. You can now remove the metallic plate by pivoting it on itself. Using a Torx T30 socket, unscrew the upper screw of the timing belt's plastic guard. Lower the engine, then unscrew the 4 screws of the lower part using the same tools. Then remove the plastic protection. It is time to set the engine. This is a crucial step. On this engine, you'll need to time the crankshaft, the crankshaft pulley, and the high-pressure pump. It is important to know that 2 crankshaft revolutions on this engine correspond to 1 crankshaft pulley revolution. This means that the crankshaft pulley can be timed, but this will not correspond to the crankshaft pulley timing position. You have a 50-50 chance. However, we will help you find the right timing. The correct crankshaft timing position is when the notch, green, on one of the crankshaft sprocket teeth is almost in line with the hole, red, in which you will be inserting the timing tool. The crankshaft timing should match the time when the arrow on the crankshaft pulley is pointing upwards. This timing will also match the time when it is possible to time the high-pressure pump. Using a ratchet, extension and an M12 socket, align the notch in the crankshaft sprocket with a hole in the timing tool. Fit the crankshaft timing tool. You can use the ratchet to insert it more easily into the timing hole. Once the crankshaft is adjusted, you can insert the timing pin into the crankshaft pulley. It can be a little difficult to insert. If this is the case, you can also use an 18mm spanner to apply slight pressure to the pulley to facilitate the insertion of the pin. You can then set the high-pressure pump. In order to distribute the belt tension evenly and make it easier to remove it, using a ratchet and a 13 socket, slightly loosen the 3 crankshaft pulley screws just enough to allow you to rotate it in its sliding points. Hold the pulley with an 18mm spanner so as not to strain the belt. Do the same with a high-pressure pump pulley using an M10 12-point socket. Then, using a ratchet and a 15 socket, roughly loosen the tensioner pulley. Then, using a 6mm Allen key, loosen the pulley by turning it anti-clockwise. Then, using a ratchet and a 13 socket, loosen and remove the take-up pulley. Then remove it. You can now remove the timing belt. Finish unscrewing the tensioner pulley. Then remove it. Using a ratchet and a Torx 16 socket, unscrew the upper idler, then remove it. Using a ratchet and a Torx 13 socket, unscrew the lower idler, then remove it. You can now clean the timing belt compartment using compressed air. You will now need to remove the water pump. Using a ratchet and a Torx T10 socket, lock the front retaining screw of the water pump. Please note that there's always some coolant left in the engine. Get a collection can for the liquid to collect the coolant when it comes out. On this engine, know that the water pump may be locked. You can use a 6mm diameter screw that you can screw onto the thread of the timing belt guard on the water pump, which will push the water pump outwards. Once there is enough space to fit a flathead screwdriver, remove the screw. Then complete the removal of the water pump by leverage with a flat screwdriver. In order to avoid any leaks, you have to properly clean the gasket surface of the water pump.
Hi, it's Theo from UseTool. I hope this video has helped you a lot in your car maintenance. We would be super grateful if you could spread the word so that we can produce even more tutorials. Simply give us a like, a comment, and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us boost the channel and help the whole community. Thanks a lot and have a great one.
You can find the bulk, parts and products used in the video on the Mr. website and linked in the description. Take the new water pump and the seals applied with it. Everyone's natural reflex is to take the water pump in hand and turn the pump to check that it's working properly. But this is a serious mistake that can irreversibly damage the water pump. This will result in constant coolant leakage from the water pump. It is necessary to immerse the pump in coolant and run it about 10 times to form a mechanical seal, which acts as a lubricant and protective film between the dynamic and static seals. Get the new seal. Install it on the water pump. Coat it with coolant. Put the new water pump in place and screw it in, starting the process off by hand. It is important to finalize the tightening of the water pump with a torque wrench. Fit the new upper idler. Put it back in place. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Then, at the recommended clamping angle, using the paint marker technique to confirm the correct angle. Fit in the new low idler. Put it back in place. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Take the new tensioner pulley provided in the kit. Refit the tensioner, making sure that the locking pin is correctly fitted in the engine block. Then screw it back on slightly, enough to be able to loosen it completely with a 6mm Allen key. Position the crankshaft and the high pressure pump pulleys so that the adjustment screws are in the middle of the adjustment windows. Take the new belt, paying careful attention to the proper direction to assemble it. The arrows on the belt have to point clockwise. Start by positioning the belt of the camshaft and high-pressure pulleys. Staying the belt between the various components. At each stage of the belt installation, it is important to check that the pulley adjustment screws are in the middle of the adjustment windows. When the final tensioning is done, it is important that the screws are not stopped in the adjustment windows, but in the middle as much as possible. There are several techniques for reinstalling the belt. In our case, we ended up putting the belt on the water pump, but other techniques can be used. Take your time. It is a long and tedious process. Get the new take-up pulley. Put it back in place. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Loosely screw on the tensioner pulley. Tension the roller so that the mark is in the center of the notch. To tighten, maintain tension with the Allen key, then finalize the tightening with the torque wrench. Then, at the recommended clamping angle. Once the belt is tensioned, check that the camshaft and high-pressure pump pulleys are not completely blocked. Finalize the tightening of the pulley screws with a torque wrench. Remove the timing components from the camshaft pulley, high-pressure pump, and crankshaft sprocket. For the latter, it is sometimes necessary to use the ratchet. Using a socket wrench, and while still working in an anti-clockwise direction, give 2 full turns to the timing belt, which is the same as 1 engine cycle. This enables you to check the proper synchronization of the engine and that the setting has been done properly. Be aware that this compression of the engine may make the rotation difficult. Nevertheless, check that there's no significant blockages. Once the 2 turns of the timing belt have been made, you now have to reset the engine. Start by replacing the camshaft pulley, high-pressure pump, and crankshaft sprocket timing components. If the timing components were difficult to install, Once the engine is timed, you can loosen the camshaft and high-pressure pump pulleys to redistribute the belt tension. Then tighten them to the right torque. Remove the timing components. Put the plastic timing belt guard back on. Then screw it back in. You can put the metal plate back in place. Reinstall the various screws. Finalize the tightening of the screws with a torque wrench. Reinstall the hose. Then screw it back in. Put the plastic protection back in. Then lock the 3 latches. Put the engine mount back in. Then adjust the height of the engine. Screw the 2 screws back onto the frame. Screw the 2 screws back onto the engine. Reattach the cooling hose to the metal plate. Reconnect the temperature sensor. Screw the filler hole holder back on. Then put the hole back in place and screw it back in. Detach the diesel filter expansion tank assembly. Put it back in position. Clip the electric sheath back in. Reconnect the pressure sensor. Reinstall the exhaust gas pressure sensor holder. Then screw it back in. Put the hoses of the plastic cover back in and lock them in place. Reconnect the exhaust gas pressure sensor. Reinstall the cooling hose tab. Then clip them back on. Reclip the tab. Screw back the 2 screws holding the fuel filter flange. For the nut, you can use a magnetic extension to position it properly and screw it on. Screw the expansion tank back on. Then reconnect the sensor. We recommend installing a new damper pulley. Reinstall the 4 screws. For tightening, it is necessary to block the rotation of the crankshaft. To do this, put the car in 5th gear and ask someone to press the brake pedal. Finalize the tightening of the screws with a torque wrench. At the recommended clamping angle. Remove the jack. You can now put the drive belt in place. To do this, we recommend watching the video How to Replace the Accessory Belt on the Golf 6 1.6 TDI. You can now put the lower mudguard back on. Then screw it back in. Screw the upper mudguard screw back on. Put the crankcase back in. You can now put the wheel back on your vehicle and put it back on the ground. Before using your vehicle, you have to put the coolant fluid back in and purge the air from the circuit. Watch the video How to Drain and Purge the Coolant System on a Golf 6 1.6 TDI. Reconnect the battery. Put back the engine cover. Operation completed.
All parts used in this tutorial are supplied by our trusted partners. These partners also help us create as many video tutorials as possible. Check them out in the description below.